What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and if you are wondering why there's only one episode on your feed this week on YouTube and on Spotify and on Apple and wherever you get your podcasts, it's because we will no longer be doing the previews for the Patreon episodes. You can watch us record the main episodes live on playback every single week, and if you would like access to those bonus episodes that you get at the end of the week, you will have to sign up for the You Know Ball Patreon in order to make up for some revenue loss that we had from, sadly, our partnership with Underdog coming to an end. We're doing some more stuff like this on playback and on Patreon. So if you have not already, please sign up on there today. You can get episodes for as cheap as $5, bonus episodes for as cheap as $5 a month on there. Some people have called it the best bargain in podcasting, folks. And you also get access to the You Know Ball Discord. So sign up if you have not already.
You also get the forbidden riffs. All of the forbidden riffs are in the Patreon episodes.
I was going to say we originally were going to call it the canceled feed.
The cancel feed, yes. So this is some are calling it our Ethan Sherwood Strauss primary feed. So if you want any good basketball takes, that's the place to check it out.
That's where it all goes. That's where the lamestream media doesn't want you to see our takes. So sign up for the You Know Ball Patreon if you have not already. Follow us on Playback. I'm streaming all week on Playback. Tonight's Tuesday, opening night. I'll be streaming for those games and the Phils. Wednesday, also streaming for League Pass for Sam Celtics as well. Parm will be joining me for that one, so you won't want to miss out on that. Sam, you're also obviously welcome, but don't feel obliged.
I will probably be there just to
watch RJ Barrett kill your team.
Yeah, I was just going to say, have a mental health crisis on live. Mental health awareness is happening, folks. It's Mental Awareness Day, and we're all talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it keeps doing this. It loses my face and it focuses on the mic. So that's what I figured out why it keeps doing that. So I have to literally pull the mic away. This camera is driving me insane. But either way, yes. So follow us on Playback. We'll be doing that all week. And in the meantime, you could still sign up on Underdog. Go to Underdog Fantasy. Our contract is coming to an end in the next week or two, but you could still sign up. They're doing a $500 deposit match as of a few days ago, so they might still be running that. This is your last chance to sign up and get a kickback for us, so use the promo code SLOP. If the Phils make it to the World Series, they have MLB Pick'em on there. They have NFL Pick'em on there. They also have NBA every single game during the regular season. In addition to that, they also run their NFL and NBA best ball. So if you have not already, check out Underdog Fantasy. It is really the best, and we could not have asked for a better first sponsor on the podcast. Rudman and all of them were awesome to us the whole time. So wanted to thank you to Underdog for being the first one to take a chance on a psychotic duo like me and Sam. Yeah. And if you also have any sponsors out there that are interested in sponsoring the podcast, let me know. Just shoot me an email at youknowballpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, we have I don't know, we've reached out to a couple places. Weinstein Productions, obviously they've struggled recently, but I hear, let's just say there's a comeback in the works, a comeback player of the year, and he's really interested in taking a gamble on us. But just in case that one falls through, we want to, keep our options open.
Look, if the DeVos family and Eric Prince don't get back to me about the sponsorship for their contracting company that I'm really excited about, they contract. You don't have to Google it or anything. But if they get back to me, I'd be really excited to be presented by them. Yeah. Plenty of companies out there that could sponsor You Know Ball.
Well, I was going to talk to you about this off the air, but let's just give everyone a little bit of inside the NBA type things. So I actually a DuPontaire actually reached out to me. He's putting together a Team Foxcatcher podcasting team, and he wants us both to be part of it. So we would just go to their house. You and I would be on the podcasting team together with them, and I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. The Foxcatcher podcast team. So I'll get back to the DuPonts about that.
Awesome.
And we'll get that figured out.
Yeah. Okay. So
deep cut for anyone who was involved in check out wrestling. Check out the DuPont family. I'm just saying. It's a good thing.
So now that the NBA season has begun, it is underway. We are about to get some of the dumbest reports you've ever seen in your entire life, and we already have one, courtesy of our best friend, the number one beat writer that you need for the Sixers. One, Mr. Keith Pompey, the Philadelphia paper of record, the Philadelphia Inquirer's lead beat reporter, had a fantastic, just amazing report today that should really come as a surprise to no one who follows Keith Pompey's work. He is a titan in the industry, sets such a high standard for journalism and accountability in sports journalism. Mm-hmm. And, he reported today that the New York Knicks would graciously be willing to offer 3 key players for 1 Joel Embiid and 2 to 3 first-round picks. Now, those players, silver medalists. Did France win in the Olympics, or were they silver medal? I can't remember. Well, either way, Evan Fournier, he won a medal at an Olympic Games. So that included in there. Former number 3 overall pick, R.J. Barrett. Mitchell Robinson, the coolest country-listening, awesome guy from Florida in the NBA. And then 2-time, really true, not due to the fact that he was available for a lot of games, All-NBA player Julius Randle, along with 2 to 3 first-round picks, probably protected, I would imagine. You wouldn't want to just give up unprotected picks for the MVP of the league. So, I was blown away that the Sixers were able to get so much for a guy like Joel, who, his rep is so down across the league.
Yeah, I think that, I think they would probably be unprotected, but, I'm assuming Daryl Morey is demanding that Fournier be in there. Daryl Morey traditionally, one of these guys trying to get blood from a stone. Mm-hmm. And that's tough. Because that team option, that gives you a lot of flexibility to, utilize cap space and, kind of take care of what you got to take care of. So that's awesome. Great for that's got to be a load off Daryl Morey's mind that he's got such a compelling offer like that
already
readily available.
Joel hasn't even requested a trade, and he already has an offer like this from a respected organization like the New York Knicks that wouldn't leak to a journalist in Philadelphia because they have a relationship, because Joel Embiid used to be someone that they represented. They wouldn't do anything like that. This is obviously, I saw a Knicks writer point this out earlier. This is obviously coming from Philadelphia sources. Why would New York ever leak this? They really there's no advantage to that if you're the Knicks.
No, why would you want? You can tell they kept all their hard. You're gonna have to pay Emmanuel quickly if you trade for him. Quentin Grimes, not Quentin.
Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes.
Quentin Grimes. I was at Miles McBride. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson. You don't want any of those guys.
Sure.
Those guys were playing in the games that were important and were good. Yeah. That now there's a lot of wear and tear on that. You want some of these guys who are fresh, off the fence, Evan Fournier.
Mitchell Robinson benched in the second round. RJ Barrett consistently benched by Tom Thibodeau. You want someone who's honestly. Randall missed some games with an ankle injury. He doesn't have a ton of wear and tear on him. You want these guys like Fournier, like you said, has sat out pretty much his entire Knicks tenure. Yeah, dropping the bit here. Dropping the bit here, one of the most laughable things that I can't believe that people were taking seriously. This is just a classic tactic from another front office that is trying to pry a player away. And of course, you're going to hear a lot of reports about this as long as the Harden thing goes on, as long as the Sixers don't make the conference finals, as long as all of this shit happens. But I just don't understand why. So I guess Keith Pompey lost his sources in Philly. He hasn't had them since Daryl got here. And this is his kind of gotcha to get back at Daryl. Hey, by the way, my source, I know that for a fact that Leon Rose is the source for this because, one, why would the Sixers ever leak this? It's a horrible package for the reigning MVP of the NBA. And then second, hold on, before you say anything, 2 years ago, Keith had a bunch of tweets about how the Sixers might be interested in Kemba Walker when he was fully cooked, when he was on the Knicks. And I'm like, the Sixers definitely didn't leak that. And Joel used to be represented by World Wide Wes and Leon Rose. So there, you can connect the dots very easily on who this report came from.
I guess what I don't understand here is like, because the offer, I think like Jeremy Sohan says in the comments that, Newback had pointed out that there was it's like a list of the players that the Knicks aren't afraid to piss off by putting in trade rumors, which is absolutely true. But that's also like, so what's your advantage to leaking that? Because that's not forcing anyone out the door. Like if you want to grease the wheels for a Joel Embiid trade, you would like, oh, hey, like I'm sick of losing in the second round every year, but like we could get this good package for Joel. Maybe Daryl should do it. Like if we're sick of it, and get that bubbling around the hometown fans. Sixers fans are seeing this and going, "Oh, holy fuck! No way! We're gonna. I'll lose in the second round. Like, I don't give a shit. That's the offer. Like, so I don't know I don't know what the idea here is.
Well, the idea is that they are showing that they are interested in Joel, and as Kyle pointed out, these are the players that they don't care if they piss off because RJ Barrett, we just paid you a ton of money and you haven't lived up to that contract at all. Evan Fournier, we've been trying to trade you since basically the day we signed the contract. Mitchell Robinson, you'll make no sense on a team if we acquire Joel Embiid. And Julius Randle's really the only one that you would get a little bit concerned about pissing off because, look, at the end of the day, we make jokes at Randle's expense a lot, but he's still a good player in the regular season and someone that can help your team win. And in the past has also kind of been up and down mood wise. So you wouldn't want to piss him off. But if it's to get the MVP of the NBA, it's an obvious move that every GM in the NBA would do. So I obviously don't want to take this report seriously at all. But if these are the kind of packages we're going to hear over the next few months, in terms of teams that are what they're willing to give up for Joel Embiid, and here's a hint: they're never gonna include anything that is good. it's just gonna be all garbage packages. And hey, we would be willing to do this. And by the way, I do just want to point out, I've said this before, and it's something our buddy Celtics Matt also pointed out as well, which is that these picks from the Knicks are every year we get, they're interested in Giannis, they're interested in Embiid, they're going to be interested in Luka or Booker or Cat or one of these guys. And every year it's like their picks just really aren't that good. Like the majority of the picks they have are pretty heavily protected that they've acquired via trade. They don't have any unprotected picks they've gotten, like the Nets got for Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Like they have multiple unprotected picks from Phoenix and Dallas that would have a lot more value on the trade market than one of these Knicks picks would. And the Knicks also have all of their own draft capital, which is great, but really the only ones that are going to have a ton of value are the ones that are 5 or 6 years out, because they're gonna, if they were to make a trade like this, they would have all of their best players still, plus Joel Embiid added to the mix. They essentially want to just keep Brunson and Hart and all these guys and just plop Joel or an MVP style player like Giannis or Embiid or Luka directly on their team. And that's just not what is going to happen. Especially, we know Daryl Morey's a psycho and that he would get every inch of value out of a trade that he possibly could especially if you're trading him to New York, to a rival team in the division. He's going to win the headlines at the very least. And then on top of that, I just want to say, most GMs aren't going to care about picks that are 6 years out when they're trading their best player, because odds are they're not going to be there anyway. Like it's pretty rare that those are the best. The Dame trade might be the first time we've seen those are the best assets you could possibly acquire in a trade for a real, like an all NBA level talent.
Yeah. And I just think, the thing about Daryl too is like Daryl is not going to, like this point is moot because Daryl's going to come in and the floor is going to be the Gobert trade.
Yes.
Like, so automatically there's only like 3 teams in the league that could make that trade. Like the Thunder are going to be able to like trade for him. The Jazz are going to be able to trade for him.
The Pelicans.
The Pelicans, probably. And that's like pretty much it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think the Heat or the Knicks or these other teams are getting in the door. Like, I don't think Daryl gives a shit where Joel Embiid wants to go.
No.
He'll absolutely like knife him on the way out and send him to Utah. Like,
I low-key think the Nets actually could which would be it would be funny if after sending them Ben Simmons and kind of nuking the whole team after the James Harden thing, that James Harden leaving leads to a Joel Embiid trade request a year from now, and then the Knicks or the Nets are the team that has one of the better packages. Because think about the value of those picks. That's what I'm really valuing if I am Daryl. And the hard part about it is that they are a little bit far out, and the Nets don't quite have like a player that they would give up to get Joel. Like, they wouldn't give up Mikal Bridges, because if you're trading Mikal Bridges, then what's the point of trading for Joel Embiid? Your team's just not going to be good enough if you trade Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
But they at least have some spicy enough picks that they could get their name in the conversation because of the quality of the picks that they acquired via the Durant and Kyrie trade. I don't think it gets the deal done because Daryl's a psycho, but that is kind of that's a team that could at least get their name in the conversation, throw their hat in the ring for these kind of trades.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, you can do worse than, like, Claxton, Cam Johnson, and like a bunch of the good picks or something like that, like, so.
Yeah. I did see, this was my favorite comment so far regarding this. Bill Simmons, I wouldn't have thrown in Mitchell Robinson in that deal, House. Why are they giving up Mitchell? I just saw this guy win the playoff series.
I don't get the Mitchell Robinson stuff. I really don't get. Like, he's
being a little overrated because of one playoff series for sure.
Yeah,
I like him. I think he's a solid starting center, and he does a lot of nice things. He also doesn't do anything on offense except for rebound.
Yes. So that's the thing. He's like just a play finisher. He's more available but worse Robert Williams. And I don't know. It's he's
Daniel Gafford,
as Will says, and I agree with that. 100%.
Daniel Gafford, if he played Fortnite and listened to Kenny Chesney.
There we go.
But yeah, so this is another quote. This is so good. I can't believe that our own paper wrote this. Like, this is some propaganda that you get from your own beat writers, not beat writers for another team.
Yes.
Like, what is this propaganda that's being published in the Philadelphia Inquirer? Leon Rose has made obtaining Embiid, if he becomes available, the number one priority according to sources. He's willing, and then they show off the package. Like, yes, of course, because why is that the case? The Knicks have now missed out on Donovan Mitchell last summer, which actually proved to be a totally fine move for them because they beat the team. It might have been smart not to overpay for Mitchell. But what I'm saying is they've been dangling this star thing ever since Rose got hired. And Brunson was a nice start. Brunson's a really good player that helped them win a playoff series and, can be probably the number two guy on a really good team, I think. And you have Brunson, and then you're trying to get that like really big name. And Giannis just signed his extension yesterday, by the way. So Giannis is off the table, at least for the next 2 years, you would imagine. Embiid is the next really big name that's probably going to be available at some point. And if you don't always have that carrot at the end of the stick, if you were a GM, then you're really like doing yourself a disservice when you're trying to get an extension, even though like Leon Rose has done a good job, all things considered. Like, they haven't made panic moves really. They've had a few ones, but they've been able to kind of get around them because they weren't disastrous. Like, the Fournier contract sucked, but it wasn't a disaster contract. Like, it's like 16, 17 million a year, whatever. Like, it hurts, but it's not going to kill you. The Barrett deal, that could age pretty poorly. And I think that they're showing some patience, which we'll get to in a second regarding the 2020 contract extensions, but they're showing some patience with this, with these new extensions for guys like Emmanuel Quickley and potentially Quentin Grimes next year, because they're trying to learn the lessons that they might have taken from extending RJ Barrett for a lot of money when he's clearly not worth that money. So I do just think that this is more, hey, I'm Leon Rose. I'm trying to get a star. I'm trying to take us up from good team that wins a playoff series to legit contender. And Giannis is off the board now. Mitchell is, probably a year away from being available if they want to go after that again. And Joel's really the only logical one that's left, because That's just kind of how things work in the NBA. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm skeptical that this trade in a Joel Embiid trade happens until at least next offseason. And even then, Daryl's going for an extension. And if Daryl wants an extension, you think he's desperate now with the Harden stuff and how he was with the Ben stuff? Just wait until he has the MVP of the league and a guy who finished runner-up 2 other seasons, and he's able to put him on the trade market when there are a bunch of teams that, in theory, should be interested in trading for Joel. And I'm really interested to see what happens with it if that does happen a year from now. If the Sixers can't convince him to try another year, and then 2 years from now, who even cares at that point? Joel's probably past his prime in 2 to 3 years anyway, and this is really like a move that you probably would want to make in the next year or two.
Yeah. I mean, just the funniest thing that to me is that Keith has gone rogue. Keith is outside of he's broken containment.
He's escaped the Empire.
He's escaped the Empire. It's like in Born Supremacy, which is, oh my God, it's Jason Bourne.
It's Keith Pompey.
Keith Pompey. Who wrote the story? Jesus Christ! It's Keith Pompey. Yeah, it's Keith. Good for Keith, man. Like,
Dan Ollinger in the comments earlier said, "Has anyone checked Keith Pompey's Venmo? Because it might just say, 'Thanks for the tip, Leon Rose.'" I'm sure those things are public if you want to check that out. So,
oh God,
yeah. Absurd report that anyone taking seriously. I felt like I was going insane when I saw a New York writer say this is a trade that could upset both fan bases, and I was like,
What
would New York fans get the MVP of the league and the best player they possibly give up is either
a guy they were booing last year.
A guy who has fell in the playoffs every single year. I know Joel's a playoff faller too, but the fall isn't quite as far as Randall's is. And then on top of that, RJ Barrett is like, I know that people are a little bit behind in terms of like what the reality of the situation is, but like we'll talk about some of these extensions from the 2020 class. Compare that to the RJ Barrett contract. Like RJ really needs to take steps in the next year or two to make that even a neutral value contract. So that being seen as like a positive asset in a trade on October 24th, 2023 is just fucking batshit insane to me.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, the NBA season is here, folks, and we are getting some bad slop. The slop is bad, folks. Don't drink it. Don't eat it. It's bad slop.
I don't even need to, like, I felt like on Twitter, I was like, I don't even need to address this, but this is the kind of slop that we're getting in October, and this is kind of what we have to go with right now. We won't really get good slop until December. That's usually how it works. It's December 15th rolls around, a lot more guys can get traded. Then it heats up in January, and then February, the slop floodgates will be let loose, and we will be having some fun. So
this slop is muddy. It is taken from dry watering holes. It's radioactive. This is nasty slop, not fit for consumption. However, we will guzzle it down for your behalf. All slop. That is that is part of the job. That is the ball curse. We have to consume all slop, even disgusting slop like made up
immoral slop.
Immoral slop like Masai Ujiri's slop. Like we will do it all.
You know how many podcasts we did on Masai Ujiri last year only for him to trade a first round pick for Jakob Poeltl?
He is a sicko. He's a very.
We did like 2 months worth of content on that guy.
And and what are we gonna do when he just lets OG Anunoby walk this offseason? Like that's going to happen. It's gonna be the Fred VanVleet thing again. We're gonna be like, okay, well, surely he'll get something.
Surely
he'll get something.
Surely he'll take the 3 first round picks that are being offered to him. By the way, everyone said, well, no one. First off, no one wants the Memphis Grizzlies first round picks because they're always going to be good. Well,
they will always be good.
Okay. We'll see.
Marcus Smart center.
Let's see.
I was going to say,
no Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark, a decimated bench compared to before.
Yeah, does it look bad right now? Sure. Is my 19-6 prediction in jeopardy? Mayhaps. But I'll tell you what. One thing that really made me feel bad about my predictions was how many people are in on the Hawks now, and I'm like, God, like that tells me it's not going to happen.
No, I think I will say this much. I think I might have been a bit too pessimistic on the Hawks. And it's not because I've heard other people. It's because I thought they legitimately looked good in preseason. And I don't think that means everything, but I think that it can be a little bit of an indicator. I think I sold short how much of an improvement getting rid of John Collins might be for the team and how good of a regular season coach Quinn Snyder is. Like, I was laughing when you were like, oh, they're like the 5 seed or whatever, or 4 seed. I wouldn't be shocked if they're that high. Like, the East is pretty winnable. Yeah. Like I just said today on Twitter, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think the only, like, because we were talking about the Miami Heat had the 5th best odds to win the conference, and I know everyone's fading the Heat, but I'm like, dude, like I know that everyone's out on them, but they've been to 3 or 4 conference finals. The Sixers have never made it past the first round. The second round. The Cavs have never won a playoff series with this group, and they lost pretty embarrassingly last year. Now I think they're going to be better this year, but you have to, and I had the Heat winning 1 playoff series, but you have to give them at least the 3rd or 4th best odds. If you're talking about the playoffs, I'm not talking about if they get to the playoffs. And someone was like, well, what if they miss the playoffs? And I was like, I'm going to be honest. I think the only teams that I would be shocked if they miss the playoffs in this Eastern Conference are the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Cavs. I think it's possible. 1 Joel injury, 1 Jimmy injury, 1 Trey injury. Like, every team is one. Like, I think that those teams at the top are the only ones that can survive a big injury and still make the playoffs. Yeah. I think that the East is not very good and deep this year, but also there's really only like probably 3 teams that I feel like have to be locks for the top 6 seeds, and those are those 3 teams.
Yeah. And I just, Trey was so bad last year. I think that they have better rim protection. Like, everyone's bringing up DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is going to come off the bench. Jalen Johnson's going to be starting by the end of the year.
He was good. He's been good in the preseason. The only thing that still worries me about the Hawks is the spacing. Because the spacing is just, and we'll get to the Okongwu extension, but like, you have Okongwu, Capella, Murray is not a 3-point shooter, catch and shoot guy. Even Trey isn't a catch and shoot guy, really. And then their best shooter that they're playing, Bogdan, is out for an extended period of time. Jalen Johnson's been a pretty decent shooter compared to what we thought he was going to be. Like, he shot well in preseason, but he's not a spacer at all. That's the thing that worries me the most about the Hawks, is that they just don't have the spacing to win a ton of games. But I still think that, like, maybe I undersold their ability. Like, I laughed when you said they were like the 4 or 5 seed. I could see them getting that high. I still have them as a play-in team. I still think they're like a 7 seed, but I wouldn't be shocked if they end up winning. They steal some games throughout the course of the regular season.
Kobe Buffkin is about to hoop.
Kobe Buffkin. I was going to say, Will shitting on the Hawks in the comments, but he also is the number 1 Kobe Buffkin stan. So because he went to Michigan. So that's I told you.
Yeah, I also think Sadiq Bey redemption year. So he's back.
Also, by the way, it's not she Kobe on my Buffkin. It's she buff on my kid until I Kobe. Okay, anyway.
There we go. Yeah. There it is. But that was the one. I'm just gonna say I was a little disappointed in my own insanity that it turns out that like Bill Simmons and Russillo and everyone, the House, all those guys went over, and everyone was.
We predicted Russillo though. We predicted Russillo because I like a lot of guys on this team, and he said like basically as much on the podcast.
Yes. I was surprised that Bill was in on them too, but I feel the exact opposite about the Grizzlies. Where now fucking everyone is fading the Grizzlies, and for good reason. All the stuff we've just said. Yeah. I still think, I mean, it's not going to be as good as I said it. Like, they are going to be.
Desmond Bane All-NBA leap is coming.
Yeah. They're not, I don't think they're going to host, they're probably not going to host a playoff series anymore, but I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I think people are picking them to be like one of the casualties that falls out of the playoffs. I don't know. Let's see it. I still believe in the Grizzlies. So, and I love that they're. I love Trill. Let me tell you, I love that everyone doesn't believe in this team. Woo!
Vernon, challenge trade. Challenge trade. Ja Morant for Karl Anthony Towns.
Oh, get out of town. Karl Anthony Towns can't get through a playoff series without crying. What are we going to do with that? Ja Morant went toe-to-toe with one of the greatest players in the league in Steph Curry. What are you going to talk about that?
All right. So we're just going to run down. There were 14 players that got extensions this entire cycle for the 2020 draft class. And we're just going to go down all of them and give our thoughts on whether we think the deals are good for the teams, or if they're good for the players, and give just some general grades on kind of these extensions that were signed for the 2020 draft class. Now, a few of these were made back in the summer when the max extensions were made available. 3 of them were made that are full-on max salaries. So LaMelo Ball got a 5-year max, Anthony Edwards got a 5-year max, and Tyrese Halliburton got a 5-year max. That's basically 5 years, 260 is the most possible earning potential on those deals. And I think we both agree that those are good deals for everyone involved. Like, they're obviously franchise-changing kind of talents in terms of they could make all NBA teams. They could be the best guy on a playoff team. And Anthony Edwards has already shown it a little bit. I think Halliburton will this year. LaMelo's gotten the Hornets to compete in a way that they haven't in the past. So I think that all 3 of these, we both would just agree that they're full-on home runs for both sides.
Yeah. I mean, it's always, whenever you're maxing, it's pretty hard to fuck up a max extension for a guy, because it's just like a guy who's clearly on that trajectory. You know, it takes a situation like RJ Barrett where it's like, boy, this guy hasn't shown us anything. Let's still max him.
He didn't even get the max, RJ.
Did he get the Jaylen Brown contract where it's like...
Yeah, a little closer to Jaylen. But when you consider the rising cap, because he was drafted 3 years after Jaylen, I think it was actually turned out to be less percentage-wise, even if the money was more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, like...
I mean, who was the last max deal? Let's be honest. The last max deal that really didn't work out was Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
And even then... And Porzingis. And Porzingis was injured.
Yeah, I was gonna say Porzingis was injured, and like Ben still made like All NBA. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
not on his contract. He made the All-Star team the first year of his extension.
Didn't he make All NBA? He made All NBA on his rookie. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was his last year of his rookie deal.
God tier bag getter.
Yeah, Wiggins is probably the best. Yeah, that's the best example. Because I was trying to think, has there been a guy who's made the All-Star team and gotten a max contract traded on his rookie deal? And I think traded before he signed that max extension. And I think the only 2 I could think of were SGA and Porzingis.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
It would need to be a guy who's like young, who's like a young guy on a team that was like trying to compete, because if you're giving up on a young guy.
Okay, so I see people in the comments saying I was comparing this to Halliburton. Like, Halliburton is the guy in this class that got the extension from his second team. He didn't sign it with his first team. He made the All-Star game. He got his extension with the new team. The only other one I see is D'Lo, but D'Lo even didn't get that extension with the second team. He got it with the third team because of the KD. That's probably one of the weirdest cases where guy gets drafted second overall, has a bad rookie season. He wasn't great his second year. makes a kind of Mickey Mouse All-Star team, gets
Yeah.
the max contract, but it gets traded to another team. So he technically was on a max contract on his third team.
Yeah, that's very silly.
That's really rare.
Yeah, and that was like also the Mickey Mouse, because that you have the dual prong thing of making the Mickey Mouse All-Star team, but then also happening to be in a situation where the Warriors were like, all right, I guess we'll take the fucking salary because we need it. We need it, if we're losing Durant. So
it was so funny because do you remember the day that trade happened? And everyone was like, yeah, they're trading D'Lo.
Yeah.
Zach Lowe was like, this is not lasting.
Yeah,
he's like, they're going to sell low. They're going to sell high on D'Lo and get back some. And hey, guess what they did? And they turned that into another championship.
Well, they traded it for the only other guy we were just talking about in Wiggins. So That's the other thing is they traded it. So yeah, again, these are pretty bulletproof deals. None of these guys are particularly injury prone. I think all of them are going to be, great value at their, I think, LaMelo has probably the high, even though he's one of the more talented guys, even though he's probably like more talented than Halliburton, he probably has more potential just because of his team situation and like the quirks in his game for it to be, like backfire and not be that valuable. But I think that like a smart team, if it doesn't work out for LaMelo, like in the next 2 years, and like Charlotte, that's what I'm saying. Like a smart team is gonna, even if his trade value isn't like great, like he could be like a Wiggins style reclamation project for some team that could easily turn him into something.
And the difference is that he's already made the All-Star team. So we're not going to talk about 2021 predictions, but my prediction, since LaMelo's already made the All-Star team, and he's already proven to be worth this max contract. My prediction is that next year, Cade Cunningham signs a max contract with the Pistons, and I think that at some point if the Pistons don't get their shit together, I think he's going to be the Wiggins guy, where he goes to another team, and it's like, oh man, he just needed to have less shot creation burden, and he can shoot and play defense and be a connective piece and like maybe make some all-star teams doing that. Like that's my long-term prediction. I don't want this for the Pistons fans, but I'm just saying that's my, like, I still look at their situation. Like I don't see where there's a world where they're not the worst team in the NBA this year.
Yeah. It's tough to see, like, especially with like the Spurs looking the way they do.
Yeah.
And the Blazers just have a lot of fucking like NBA talent that, I'm sorry, quite frankly,
stack up the rosters.
Yeah,
stack up those rosters, dude. It's not even close. The Blazers are way better.
Yeah, like I saw a draft Twitter guy. I don't want to out anyone on this, but the draft Twitter guy was like, "So remind me again why Scotty Barnes is automatically a lock-in. He hasn't really done much in the NBA." And then literally the next tweet from him was something about how Cade is like gonna be like amazing, and I was like,
a lock for All-Star.
Very interesting. It's like a lock for like an All-Star team this year.
Or for a max.
Like one of the top young, like they were listing like their top young players, and they were like, Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Cade, of course, and it's like always that shit. And it's like the 3 army soldiers and the clown, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold on.
Well, look, obviously we've been kind of skeptical of Cade so far in his career, but even if he is going to shine, it's got to be in a better context than what they've built for him.
Yeah,
they don't have spacing around him, and like I can't even blame a guy who's already has limited athleticism and isn't like the most elite shot creator for himself is going to struggle in any situation where you put a bunch of non-shooters around him. Like that's just the reality of that guy's game. And I do think that I'm interested to see from the 2021 class who we're talking about in a year from now. If I had to make a prediction right now, the guys that get maxes would be Cade, Mobley, Franz, and then I think Scotty. I think those 4. Giddey, Jalen Green, those guys that were like are still developing. I think that their team, like I think Presti would just wait. I think he would just be like, all right, he's not going to max him on day one like he did with SGA.
Yeah.
But the locks for me are Franz and Mobley.
You forgot Corey Kispert, but I'll forgive you this one time. So yeah, I was going to say, locks. Yeah, I mean they're probably gonna max Cade, which is fucking brutal. I'm interested. I'd be interested to see what like Şengün and like Kuminga get. They're going to be like in this zone, you know.
Kuminga's not going to get an extension, I don't think, unless he really breaks out this year. I think he's going to be a wait and see guy. I think that he's going to, because the Warriors aren't going to want to commit a ton of money if he's still on the Warriors. The Warriors aren't going to want to commit a ton of money to a guy that is still kind of like raw, unathletic. Their tax bill's just so crazy.
I just think this completely depends on what the Clay decision is going to be. So
yeah, you know. We'll see. We'll see with that. But for right now, would you agree with me? I think Mobley and Franz are the only locks to get maxes.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would say Cade and Barnes, because of how their teams view them, are likely to get maxes. And then the rest of them will prove over the next year whether they're worth that max contract or not.
Yeah. You know, maybe Dosunmu has an outside shot, but outside of that, no. Also, Mamu.
Dosunmu. Well, Jaden Springer will be getting the Jaden McDaniels contract a year from now.
They got to pay Mamu before they before they have to pay Wemby's contract. Yeah.
You got to lock down your franchise players. Poku, Mamu, all these guys, obviously. Yeah. So, all right. Let's move on to the next group of contract extensions. So we'll do the guys that got $100 million and up.
Okay.
Desmond Bane got a 5-year, $197 million extension. Technically, I think that his actually has escalators where he can get more if he gets like all-stars and all-NBAs. But for right now, it's listed as 5 years, $197 million. So, I mean, that's when the extension was announced, my brain was like, what has so much fucking money? But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, right, that's like a much smaller percentage of the cap than it used to be. And we're just going to have to get used to these new numbers. So 5 years, 197, I think it's fine for both sides. The Grizzlies were not, like, he'll probably be their second or third best player behind Jaren Jackson Jr., obviously, and no one else. And parody. And I think that he's a really good fit on a lot of teams, and worst case scenario, he will always have trade value if things go sideways because he's an elite shooter that can hang defensively, and he's improved as a creator over these last few years. I loved him in the draft. I never expected him to get this much money coming out. Like, I wanted the Sixers to draft him at 21 if Maxey wasn't there. And he has completely exceeded my expectations. I think it's a good deal for the Grizzlies, and I also think it's a good deal for Bane because if he hit the open market, he probably gets a similar deal. But this way, he gets the full 5 years with this new CBA where you don't have to get that full super max in order to get the full 5 years. And then on top of that, he gets to stay with the Grizzlies and develop with a team that's one of the best teams in the NBA at developing talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we're talking about these extensions, there's a couple of realities that we kind of have to talk about. And Zach and Pelton kind of got at this on their most recent thing, but like, it's not, the cap going up is not as sure of a thing as it once was. Like, sure. The TV deals, there's a lot more pushback on the TV deals now. The economy is...
They are also not going to be on TV, potentially.
Yes, I was going to say...
On your streaming services that we call TV now.
No, there's like a high chance of like an FTX-style fucking thing going on with like the league broadcast rights where it's like Amazon and like Tubi are covering, are have the NBA because like, traditional partners like Turner and... ESPN are just bulk at this number. Like they're, Bill went along. He had No Tech Ben on to do, Bucks propaganda earlier this summer. And they talked about, deal stuff that is going to get squeezed. And of course they had this, weird angle on it, but we're hearing like similar things from people like in the league that like, this is going to be more of a fight. The ratings, the numbers, not just going up anymore. So,
in perpetuity, at least. Like, it might from year to year on good years where the league makes good money, but the media deals aren't quite as certain. And then in addition to that, like, I think that the expansion could change the calculus for everything too, with new teams coming in. Like, I don't think it's so sure. So I think it's good for these players to lock down these contracts today while they can get their money. And I think it's why a lot of guys are doing their extensions before and not hitting free agency as well.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and I think that like these deals that used to be like surefire, like, oh, we'll just overpay him and then it'll be fine. Like the Jaylen Brown. Remember that when that first Jaylen Brown extension hit and everyone was like, holy fuck. Like,
yeah,
this guy hasn't done anything. That is so much money. And it ended up being a pretty good deal.
The bargain by the end. He made multiple All-Star teams that he was making like $25 million a year, not even.
Yeah. So it's like, that's like a pretty good deal. That stuff, that type of effect is going to be like less pronounced. And I think Bane is a good market place for this because he is not a, I think he's going to be a good steal. I don't think this is going to like necessarily be a steal. I don't think it's necessarily going to be like a bad contract. You can't be a sub all-star guy on, guys who don't make all-star teams make the backs all the time. So like, I think it's totally fine to kind of have Bane in this bucket. And I think that
I also think that you're paying for the prime years of his career too.
Right. Exactly.
You can look at these contracts as one way as this guy will get better. And you can look at the Bane contract as opposed to someone like Jaden McDaniels, who's 22, 23. Bane's 25. So you're paying for his prime years. You're paying for basically 26 through 30. So those are the best years of his career that you're going to get. And he's going to he's going to end up being worth that money during this contract.
Is what J. Joe's saying in the comments true? Because that didn't used to be the case on the last CBA. I know there's some weird stuff with the new CBA, but it used to be that the number you signed for on your first year of your deal was the max. And then you had your either bird rights or other extensions. It was 6.5 raises for full bird rights, and then 3.5 for everybody else. So
yeah, I couldn't tell you.
I don't know. I'd have to ask Dredd. It didn't used to be that way. So unless there was a big change in this CBA, it's not based on the cap, and the numbers are not projections. So
sure. Yeah.
Are they okay? So maybe if the comments are saying
cap protected, then
that's really interesting. I had not heard that.
Well, either way, even if we get a massive cap spike, the cap smoothing will probably change. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't make so much more money is what I'm trying to get at here. If we had a massive cap explosion, because it's going to be smoothed over from year to year.
Why would you? Man, that makes the max such a interesting thing. Like, I don't. I gotta look that up. Anyway. But Desmond Bane, good deal for him, I think. So
yeah, no, I think it's a fine deal for both sides. Let's move on to one that I thought was really funny, because this is where I talk about where people are really starting to understand how big these contracts for these guys are going to get moving forward. Like Devin Vassell's 5 years, $135 million, and I saw a person who tweeted that's more of a casual of basketball, but they watch the NBA, and they tweeted, wow, this guy's making $135 million, and I literally just figured out who he is. Congrats to him. But like those are the kind of deals that you're going to see going forward, where you have to take a step back and reimagine kind of what these numbers are. Because at first you think, wow, 135 for a guy like Vassell is a lot of money. But then it's like, that's $27 million a year, which is not that big of a percentage of the cap. And if that is the case, then that is this is like an above average starter salary, basically. 27 million. A few years ago, it was like 17 million for an above average starter. 27 million's like an above average good starter, top 75 player in the league type guy. And he'll make 27 million over the course per year over the course of this contract if everything projects out correctly. So, I mean, yeah, Vassell's good. He's young. I was a little bit surprised that he got more money than Jaden McDaniels, but the upside, I guess, for Vassell is the fit with Wemby while Wemby develops, plus the fact that he's a knockdown shooter and he has at least some creation potential. I personally thought that Jaden McDaniels might end up getting more money than him, and this might be a little bit much for Vassell. and not quite as much for a guy like McDaniels, who we'll talk about next. But it's a fine contract considering where the Spurs are in their rebuild as well. They don't really have the talent to like wait around and not give a guy like Vassell an extension. Now, they could have let it play out to restricted free agency, but they historically have liked taking care of their guys, and it's a perfectly fine contract to me.
Yeah. I think it's all of these ones, like especially McDaniels in particular, to me is one where it's like that's an interesting one because he's like such a valuable piece, and like that is like I think that is going to be the new definition for starter money. What he got, because that boils down to like a little under 30 million per. I think.
Yeah, I mean Devin Vassell's making 27 million, and he has 4 million more overall on his contract than Jaden McDaniels. So Jaden McDaniels will be making like 26.5, I guess.
Yeah. Just a quick thing too. I read through the CBA on maximums. That has not changed. So it is tied to the cap when your contract is executed, but it is still the same player raises. As that goes up. So
yeah, Devin Vassell contract, fine. Whatever. I think it surprised a lot of people just because the number's so big, but I actually don't think it's that big a deal. Especially because we're a year from now is when these deals kick in. They're not this season. So I think that this is a fine contract. I don't have any issues with it. Jaden McDaniels, 5 years, 131 million. I saw people pushing back on this one and saying, whoa, that's a lot of money for a guy who hasn't really done anything. You just talked about the archetype of player he is. He's a 6'10" forward that can guard like pretty much any position except for like true bigs, I guess, but he can guard a lot of different positions. He's going to guard the other player's best team and do it adequately. He's an all defense level talent that can also provide some rim protection. He's incredibly good at navigating screens, and he just had another step in his offensive development as a shooter, as a creator. I think of all the deals on this deal or on this list, this might seem like a bit of an overpay to people that aren't really paying attention, but he's 22. I believe he might have just turned 23. And you're going to if he does develop in the way I think he could, I think that this could end up being a deal that in like 3 years is actually more of a steal than people realize.
Yeah, I think. Well, and again, I think it goes back to like what does the cap do? You know what I'm saying? Like, and these type of guys can pop sometimes too. I think that's a great call by Natek in the
Mikal Bridges. Yeah. Mikal Bridges contract's 2.0. And by the way, I do just want to point out McDaniels at his age at 22 was way better than Mikal Bridges was at 22. Way better than OG Anunoby was at 22. Like he's a legitimately good player at 22 years old, a starter level guy. And that's where I think the real value could come from this group.
Yeah. So I think that, this is the, I think that these type of contracts, this is more where I see the value. You know what I'm saying? Like this is traditionally where you do it because this is where you're making bets on guys, right? And I think that the smart money is to make these bets on these guys in this archetype, like making these sorts of bets. When Zach Lowe and we'll get to these guys a little bit later on, but when Zach Lowe and Kevin Pelton were talking about this on their podcast, they were they brought up other guys who are not as qualified and not as projected as well as McDaniels, but are like functionally kind of similar, just worse at things like Denny Avdia. I know they brought up
Patrick Williams.
I think Patrick
didn't
Williams
get an extension, but yeah.
Patrick Williams is one. They talked about. I'm forgetting. They were talking about someone who's more of a 2-3. They talked about
Josh Green.
Josh Green. That was who I was talking about. They talked about Josh Green. They talked about Aaron Nesmith. Even is more of like a 2-3. But these guys in particular who are 3-4s who have this kind of size. and can kind of pop, because these guys can also take like kind of mini leaps through like changes in situation or just the team changing around them. Like look at what happened with Rui Hachimura. Like I would have never thought Rui Hachimura would be like an $18 million player. And
so yeah, it is these guys that are incredibly rare archetypes of dudes, 3-4s who can guard the opposing best perimeter player. Whether it's a guy like he's a guy who can guard Luka, but he also can guard the Tatums of the world. And then, by the way, what does this indicate to you? Because I know what it indicated to me. Karl Anthony Towns is definitely
absolutely. Yeah. Like, there's pretty much no other way to make that work.
Yeah.
So
unless they're going deep into the tax for the last 2 years of Rudy's deal, I think it is. I think he has 2 years left on his deal after this season. So that's where I think that this indicates to me they move Karl Anthony Towns at a certain point, and McDaniels maybe then gets his opportunity if Karl Anthony Towns is moved, because then offensively he'll have more of a need to be on the ball.
See, the package that we were just talking about as being funny for Joel Embiid, that might actually make some sense for Cat, because the Wolves have the luxury in this Cat trade where they can just take back 3 or 4 good guys, because they now have like 3 solid
core
players.
Pieces,
you know what I'm saying? And they could like, take Randall in the picks and like swap that for like Pascal Siakam or something like that, and then like really be cooking with gas or something like that. So
they have options for sure. I think that kind of package would be more realistic for someone like Cat, at least involved in the trade, whether it is to swap out to get a better guy. Like I would like Siakam for them as well if they were able to get someone like him. But I of all the deals on here, I think the one that has the most likely to have for the team is more. I would even say, if you're McDaniels, he didn't make a lot of money in his first few years in the league compared to some of these other guys. That's another factor in this. Like every other player we've talked about except for Desmond Bane so far was a lottery pick. So because of the fact that those guys were lottery picks, they've already made a decent amount of money. I'm sure McDaniels just wanted to get a payday. If I were his agent, I might have said, let's wait another year, because if he continues to take steps on offense, I already think he's one of the 10 to 15 best defenders in the NBA. That would be incredible for him, and he could have gotten a massive payday in restricted free agency next year. So this is the first one where I feel like the team might end up getting the best. And then that's also might be the case for this next one. Nneka Okongwu signed a 4-year, $62 million deal. So it's good value for the Hawks.
I love that. That might be my favorite contract, non-max division. That's going to be a steal later on down the line, I think.
4 years, $62 million. Okongwu's 22 years old. He is someone who he has been, hold on. 62, let's see. 62 divided by 4 is $15.5 million per year. That's good value. The one thing I will say about Okongwu, because he's someone who's had some moments in the playoffs. In that Sixers series, even as a rookie, he was playable and good. He has had a good, solid start to his career for how young he is, how raw he was coming out of college as well. I do think that this is a little bit of I think that nerds overrate him a little bit. Like, I think he's good on offense, or he's solid on offense, but he has a long way to go on that end. His defense is really good, and he could get to the point where he is like a legit starter level center, but he has been a backup for a few years now. And a lot of these backups always have like eye-popping stats and analytics, and then they sometimes get into the starting lineup and they're not quite as effective. So I think if he turns into an above league average center, if he's the 12th best center in the NBA and you got him for $15 million a year, that's a steal. 100%. Totally agree. Just on its face, that's a steal. But I do think that nerds love to, because he was a draft Twitter darling and he's popped a little bit off the bench so far. But like the hard thing for the Hawks with me is like, I've seen people say they're definitely going to trade Capella now, but Capella's better than Okongwu, and you're not going to get a ton of positive value back for Capella. So that's where I struggle to see, like, how many minutes is Okongwu able to play this year for the Hawks if they can't move on from Capella and get positive value back.
I mean, it depends on where the Hawks see their future. You know what I'm saying? Like, how old is Trae Young? Trae Young's got to be 24, 25, something like that. Like,
He's 26, I believe.
26. Wow, he's older than I thought.
Trae Young?
Was he a sophomore? Was he a sophomore when he came out?
Oh, he just turned 25.
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah. So like, he's like 25. What Capella's like 29 or something like that, right? Like,
Yeah, he's 29, 30, I believe. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. Like, if the team is still built around Trae Young, which is kind of a big if, because I don't. I guess what you're trying to do with the Hawks is you're trying to wish cast like what's going on with Landry Fields and his front office here. I will say I have a lot of belief in Quinn Snyder as a coach. I think he's built some really interesting teams around some of these guys. And I think that I just believe in Okongwu a lot. And I think that even if Okongwu ends up being your 7th or 8th man, that's a perfectly reasonable contract for a 7th or 8th man. You know,
in a few years, this is what a bench contract could look like, and he has starter potential. That's
what I'm saying.
This is like just above the next MLE, which is why I think on its face it's good value. I just think that I just want to pump the brakes a little bit on the. People talk about him. I guess you could say the same thing about Bam a few years ago, but people talk about him like he's Bam, and I think he's good. I want to see. Can I see it? Can I see it a little bit more? Can you start some games? Huh? Can you start? I think I would just like to see him start for a full season before he gets crowned in the way that people have. But I think on its face, incredibly good value contract for the Hawks, and I would have not signed this deal if I were Okongwu and his agent. I would have waited until next summer.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I was just listening to your Hawks slander one more time before it's drowned out in the crushing and gasping of the season. Okongwu breakout player of the year. Let's go.
I guess it's hard for me to gauge the value of contracts for centers because there's either contracts like the Miles Turner contract where I go, wow, that's a steal. Or there's contracts like the DeAndre Ayton contract where I go, wow, that's way too much.
Yeah.
And then there's the best players in the league that deserve their full maxes. So that's where with these center deals, it's hard for me to gauge. But $15 million for a guy that at worst, honestly think worst case scenario for Okongwu, he turns out to be like the 20th best center in the NBA, and you're fine paying him $15 million to be your starting center because let's be real, like the center position doesn't matter nearly as much as it used to.
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, like, is Okongwu going to be worse than Brandon Clark?
No. That's why I think it's a good deal.
Yeah. Like, so I think that's my favorite deal. Like, obviously all the guys on maxes.
Yeah, because you love to save Tony Wrestler money.
I do. I think he's a good guy.
Yeah. I think his fail son needs more money.
Subscribe to the Ball Patreon so you can hear our thoughts on Tony Wrestler.
Worst owners draft. Check that out.
Worst owners draft. Check it out.
You don't want to miss that episode.
You don't want to miss that episode. So yeah, that was my favorite one for sure. I also really liked the McDaniels contract. Honestly,
those are the best value deals of the non-maxes because the maxes are always going to end up being the most value usually.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, some of these other, I mean, do we want to go to like the next tier? I mean, I don't know how into it we want to get with some of these other guys like Neesmith and Josh Green. And
well, let's run through the last few contracts and we'll say whether we like them or we don't.
Okay.
Isaiah Stewart, 4 years, $60 million.
I think he's too small. I don't really like that one. I'm going to be honest. I kind of like Beef Sweet. I kind of like him. I just, as like a bench player, and that's just a little too expensive for a bench player. Like, I don't know.
Like, you'd have to be, I'm just not a beef stew guy. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think he's undersized. I think the shooting has been way over exaggerated for him because he is a big that shoots threes. Everyone just says he's a stretch 3, or stretch 5, but he's really not. And they're playing him at the 4 with Jalen Duren. Like, I hated this extension for the Pistons, to be completely honest. This was the first contract that if I were the other team, I would, like, if I were the Pistons, I would have waited, as opposed to most of these deals. I'm like, if I were the players, I would have waited, like McDaniels and Okongwu. If I were the Pistons, I would have definitely waited to see how he fits is my big thing. Like, it's not it's not that Beef Stew is an objectively bad player. He's a fine rotation big, but one, do you really want to be paying a guy that is a fine rotation big this much money? And then two, how does he fit? Because your job, if you're Troy Weaver, your job is gone in a year or two. It's amazing to me that he got an extension. He's so bad at his job.
He's so bad. He might be our worst GM in the league right now.
But the reason I say this is because you just drafted another guy who's going to take some time with a shot in Nassar Thompson. Jaden Ivey was also the same kind of prospect. Cade Cunningham shooting hasn't panned out quite as much. You're really hurting your best prospects. Jalen Duren was never going to be a shooter. He was always going to be a Rob Williams type big. And I just feel like this extension is just another questionable move, in the same way that when you paid Marvin, Beef Stew's better than Marvin Bagley, but in the same concept. Why did you pay this guy who might not fit with your best players and had no other options out there, really? I just don't get it at all.
And is also just not going to have positive value. Nobody's going to want Beef Stew. You know what I'm saying? And that's death for a team that is still fucking bad. That's the other thing. What are you worried about? You're still going to be bad, but
I didn't like the extension at all for the Pistons here.
I'm not as down on it as you are. I think he's okay. I just think it's a little bit of.
Has he played well against the Celtics?
Yes.
No, I'm just. I'm generally because there are certain guys in the league that I have a different impression of because they play well against the Sixers, and Beef Stew has never played well against the Sixers. He's had one good game against the Sixers.
I like how hard-nosed Beef Stew is. It's hard for me to quit guys.
He's a dog.
Guys who have the dog in them, it's hard for me to completely write them off.
If you could be covered in blood,
yes,
and you're going after LeBron James like that,
yes,
you got that dog in you. I cannot argue that one.
No, he's gonna end up on some. He's gonna have a Pat Beverly renaissance, as a beloved 6-man.
Let's go.
For some team that he's not on yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Saying he'll be on the Kings or something, and they'll love him as their backup big or something like that, as the tough guy who's getting into it with the other team's best player or something. Yeah. They're Grant Williams.
They'll be happy. They'll be happy to pay him $15 million a year. All right, so let's move on to the Denny Avdia contract. 4 years, $55 million. I just don't know anything. I'll be honest. I know there are nerds out there that really like Denny's game. I can't say I've watched enough Wizards games to really have an informed opinion on this one.
Every time I've ever seen Denny, I've either been oh man, that's another Wizards draft, disaster,
sure.
Or I've been oh shit, Denny Avdia, okay, I've seen a mix of both. Okay, Trill is gone, so I'm gonna take over now. Guys, on Honkai Star Rail, it is a gacha-style JRPG game where you can actually go ahead and you can get all sorts of different pulls. I have just pulled Jinglu, and I have also pulled Bronya. So this is really helping my team composition as I'm going to go. Okay, I'm forgetting. Oh, Trill's back. Okay, here we go. So
I just got I got sent to the homepage, I guess, by Adam Silver because I didn't want to watch the Lakers.
Yeah, you're not allowed. By the way, we kept talking about basketball while you were gone. It's fun.
I heard.
So.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I think Denny. I think I kind of alluded to earlier. I think that given what Jaden McDaniels got, I think it's reasonable to take this kind of bet. It's more of a risk.
Sure.
You can see this contract not panning out, but I can at least see the outline of the player that Denny Avdia could be. And I think, wasn't he one of those guys who came into the league insanely young? Wasn't he 18 or 19? When
he's a European player.
So he's 22.
Yeah. So Isaiah Stewart was the same way. He's also 22. He's about to be 23 in a week. Denny Avdia, or I'm sorry, a few months. So there's that element of it. Look, the Wizards where they're at in their rebuild, this is a fine contract because look, I look at where Detroit's at in their rebuild and I say, you're in year 3 or 4 of your rebuild and you're still handing out questionable contracts. If you're going to hand out a contract that you're taking a bet on a guy, I'm fine with doing it in the first year of your rebuild because it's not going to be completely immovable. I think that, like, I know Warriors fans like think Denny would be great for their system, especially because Draymond would definitely support that. But the but I think that I think that it's going to be interesting to see what, because I feel like the Wizards are going to be the Jordan Poole tank commander type thing, and we already saw him getting into it with Denny Avdia the other day about not passing the ball. So maybe it isn't the best environment for him to develop as a player, but it's a fine contract to make this early in your rebuild.
Yeah, and we'll see. Yeah, I was gonna say I think the Wizards' plan, Winger and those guys, is I think Bilal Coulibaly is the only guy who's like really gonna probably stick. Maybe Corey Kispert. I think their plan for these guys are to like showcase them and to spin these guys off into like better draft assets or other young players. Is for sure their plan for this year. Denny's young enough that maybe he is on the next great Wizards team, but I think it's more likely that like they're kind of building him up over the next like 3 or 4 years to like have like some sort of have him be like an enticing chip as like a fifth man for like a team that needs a big wing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The Milwaukee Bucks, the Milwaukee Bucks 4 years from now that are desperately trying to get Giannis to stay. So.
Look, with every guy like Denny, it just comes down to the shooting for me. It always does. If he can get to league average shooting, he's good enough at other things based on what I've heard and seen. He'll be fine. If he's a 31% 3-point shooter, it's probably going to be hard for him to be a starter on a winning team, to be completely honest with you. So that's kind of how I feel. So we have the next one up is Josh Green, 3 years, $41 million. I mean,
that's fine.
I would have waited if I were Josh Green. I would not have taken this deal personally.
You think he's going to do better than that?
Yep. I think that if I know Isaiah Stewart is the one that we've kind of been like, I don't really know anything about that. Like that doesn't look very good to me, but I still think that like when you're a guy that can defend, you can dribble, shoot, and pass. You're athletic. You're still young. Josh Green's still like 22. It's got real potential to be, I think, a steal of a contract for the Mavericks. I think that if he pops in the way that I think he could have gotten a 3-year, $60 to $70 million contract next offseason if he had waited. And he's getting 3 for 41. Yeah. Like, I think he's good. And I think that I don't think that he's like gonna. I just think he's a really good 4th or 5th starter on a good team, and that he will outplay this contract.
Okay, I still see him as like more of like a bench guy, and I worry about like the size and stuff. But I guess he is a really good defender. Like I just worry about what that means when you're a defender like that. When you're like it's just such a difference being a good defender when you're like a 2-3 guy versus like a 3-4 guy,
also think he's going to be good at playing off Luka, to be completely honest with you. Because the thing with Luka is that you're going to play him at the bigger positions, and he can play. Green will probably play one of the guard spots. Dude, he shot 64% from 2 last year. And
I forgot. Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and like he's not like.
I mean, they didn't have a center. So they have pretty good spacing with 0 centers, but
yeah, they definitely have an environment that I think will be really good for like. If I think about the guys I want to put around Luka, I usually think about 3 things: can they shoot? Can they defend? And can they make a play out of thin air? And I think Josh Green can do all of those things. Like, he's not going to be run your offense, but he is going to be catch and shoot, attack closeouts, keep the ball moving. He's a good jump passer. He can get to the rim. He can finish at the rim. I'm telling you, I think that this is going to be, I think in a few years, we're going to be like, he should be making $20 million and he's going to be making like whatever this is, like 14. This is barely above the mid-level exception. Like in 2 years, this is going to be the mid-level exception, and he's going to be. I think he's going to be one of the best value contracts. Yeah.
No, it'll be a good contract. I don't necessarily. I guess I just don't necessarily feel that much different about like Josh Green than I do about all these other guys. But I guess it is $20 million less, so that is a good point.
It's a lot less. I was going to say, because think of it. Look, let's talk about the guys who are below him, which are Cole Anthony, 3 for $39. I think that's a fine deal for Cole.
I actually that's like my next favorite one.
Yeah,
I can't quit Cole Anthony. Like I think he has real 6-man like potential, and I think that's a really good deal for like a 6-man type guy who's like a microwave scorer for your team. Like I don't think he's gonna be on the Magic much longer, but like I think he's gonna be a good 6-man for a team later on down the line. So I really like that one.
Yeah, a team that needs guards that can handle the ball and shoot. Cole is a guy that if he's on a heater, he looks like an all-star. So there's going to be certain games and weeks. Yeah. He's very like he can fit into that. He's not quite the athlete that a Jordan Clarkson is, but he can be that kind of 6-man. And if you're paying around the MLE for a guy like that, I mean, look, when we did our long shot star in plain sight thing, he was like a guy that I took like 10 to 11 picks into that draft. But I don't really see that kind of upside for him. But in the best case scenario, the best world for Cole Anthony, maybe he could morph into a CJ McCollum level player. And if you get this contract for a CJ McCollum level player, that is an incredible deal. So I think it has potential to be a really good value for the Magic. I also don't think that the reason why I would have like with Okongwu and with Josh Green and those guys and Jaden McDaniels, I probably would have waited, is because I think that those kind of players that can hang defensively and fit as a role player on teams tend to get paid more in free agency. I think with Cole Anthony, that archetype of player, the score first guard, that's generally more of a 6-man, unless you're an all-star, that's not really a crazy archetype that teams are willing to like pay a lot for. So I think that him getting this 3 for $39 deal is fine for him. If he improves over the next few years, he can still get a big contract at a certain point. He's like 23 years old. I like it I actually like this deal for both sides. I think it's good for Cole to get paid right now. And I think that it has potential to be a good fit and a good value for the Magic. So I was fine with that one. The next one is one I really need your opinion on because I was very surprised.
I know who it is. I know who it is.
Aaron Nesmith, 3 years, $33 million.
Let's go. He's back, baby. Zach Lowe had a really funny thing about this. He was saying, like, congratulations to Aaron. It's like one of the most backhanded things of all time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, he was a starter last year. I think that's a great extension for him because, it could be 5 days into the season and he could be out of the rotation. Like,
Jesus!
It's like very funny. Like you didn't like say it like it was like the point he was trying to make is like they've got Mathurin, they've got Nembhard, they've got
Ben Shepherd,
they've got all these guys who are
good in preseason.
Yeah, they've just got all these guys who are he was more making a point about it being a roster crunch, but it just came off like, yeah, go steal that money, Aaron. Yeah. Like,
get your money, Furkan Korkmaz.
I will say, Aaron Nesmith's an interesting player. He was very frustrating to me when we were counting on him to like do something for the Celtics, but he's a better rebounder than you think. He's not as good of a shooter as you think. I think if he could ever get himself back to that kind of, the shooter he was kind of supposed to be coming out of college, like a lot of the draft Twitter guys said he's not that shooter, and so
he's not going to shoot 52% from three like he did in college for a year,
right?
14 games, really.
Yeah, but if he could, if Aaron Nesmith could turn himself into like a 38% 3-point shooter, I think he's a valuable. I think he can like play in this league. Like he doesn't look athletically like he doesn't belong. He can rebound. Like he has another skill in rebounding that can keep him on the court. It's not just shooting. I like when I've watched him play defense, he didn't look like totally hopeless or anything like that. I think he's got the tools to kind of do some of this stuff. So I think it's a fine deal. Like $11 million is like fucking nothing. And, you can just
which is such an insane statement to say, but it's true compared to a lot of the deals that we've talked about. Like 11 million really isn't anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna stake my claim on this. I think Aaron Nesmith stinks, and I don't understand why the Pacers did this at all. But good for him. I'm honestly, I think it is good that he got paid like this, because I don't think that they
didn't need to pay him like this. Yeah. I'll say that.
Maybe he's like a good locker room guy. Like maybe he's like someone that you like. Look, we're not going to be title contenders until Halliburton's squarely in the middle of his prime, so we might as well have a good guy around who's an energy guy we can bring off the bench and is a good locker room dude. And it's such a small cost for a place where players don't want to play anyway.
And Zach Lowe said this, that Carlisle likes him a lot. You know, like so I think it's good to have. When your other guys are fucking off, your like higher main players, you have Aaron Nesmith come in and bust his ass. Even if he's bad, you know, he's giving you that energy and kind of like making the team try hard. You know what I'm saying? And that's a staple of the Rick Carlisle teams.
Aaron Nesmith is the spiritual successor to James Ennis. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like it was a nice player to have on your team, but like he bounced around for a reason type guy.
Yeah, he's not a good player right now, but there's enough there that I think he could turn himself into a rotation player like as soon as like this year, and I would not be shocked. I wouldn't bet on it, but I would not be shocked.
Yeah. So. All right, so Sam, fine with that one. I don't get it at all from the Pacers' perspective, but I'm glad that
to be clear,
got a buck.
They shouldn't have done it because they were betting. They were. I think it will end up being fine value. They didn't need to do it. Nobody else was giving him $11 million.
Well, as Piss points out in the comments, they can trade him in 2 or 3 years when that's an expiring deal.
Yeah, and
if that's the case, great. You have you need to have matchable salaries at the very minimum, and maybe he could be a rotation wing for you. So, all right, and then the last two here are. We'll save the last one because we've talked a little bit about it, but Zeke Naji, 4 for 30. I will say I thought that Woj's tweet was laughable about this. I don't know if you saw Woj's tweet when he signed the extension, but okay, so I'll pull up the exact tweet because I just want to keep in mind here, I don't have a ton of Zeke Naji takes, but I do want to say that I know from Nuggets Twitter, they've told me he's just a wait and see guy. Like he has not really done anything to prove that he is a legit backup center in the NBA. He's kind of been inconsistent.
In a perfect scenario,
driving me insane.
They want us to watch the game so bad.
Every fucking 5 minutes.
We will do it.
So Zeke Naji hasn't really done anything so far in his NBA career to justify this contract. This is merely a projection. This is, hey, let's pay a guy, what is it, $7 or $8 million a year for to be potentially a backup center to, we have the best player in the NBA right now. It's important that he has a good backup, and we think he can develop into that. Based on what he's shown so far in his career, he really has not justified this contract at all, I don't think. And the way that Woj presented it was, because I see someone say that the Zeke Naji media mafia is real. He apparently has some supporters in the media because, so here's Naji has been another player development success story for the defending NBA champions and is expected to take on a more prominent role with the Nuggets this season. Are you sure about that? Because I feel like he has not really played. I know he's been hurt, but like he hasn't really done anything so far in his career. So I wouldn't say that he's a success story. I would say good for him to get the money right now, lock up that next deal, and see if he can become someone. But so far in his career, like this is a guy that really has done absolutely nothing. And Nuggets fans agree with me. Like they're like, this is a wait and see kind of deal. So,
whoa, by the way, apparently what they were trying to show us on the thing, apparently Chuck like asked Silver directly about all the domestic violence shit, like on the thing. And like, it's kind of going viral right now. So good for Chuck. Obviously, what Adam Silver like tried to wriggle his way out of it. Yeah,
I'm sure he PR answered back to whatever. I do just want to say,
Chuck.
I think that I think an underrated part of Charles Barkley is that I think he is more like the average American than the majority of people that we have.
Exactly. Yes.
Complete like he has like conservative values, but he also like is like, I love trans people. Also, we should not have domestic abusers in the league. All that stuff. Like he is more of your average American voter than anyone could really portray on television.
He is by far the most normal that a multimillionaire can be. Like he is the most normal. Chuck's got to be close to getting close to being a billionaire. Like 70 almost. Yeah. Well, he's got to be getting kind of close to being a billionaire. He's got to be like one of the most normal. He's got to be close to be one of the most normal, like $100 million guys there is. So, respect to Chuck for that one. I don't have a lot of Zeke Naji takes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone does, except for people that are like, we just don't want to watch Jeff Green last year being a small ball 5 or whatever.
I thought he looked better than their other backup centers, so that was good. Good for him on that.
So, yeah. And then the last one, we talked a little bit about this before, but Peyton Pritchard, 4 years, $30 million. Let's go. And they said the 2020 draft was a failure for the Boston Celtics.
Not true, baby. Not true. Poof. Both our guys got extended.
What do you mean?
Both the Celtics draft picks.
Oh, Neesmith and Pritchard.
Yeah. So
I didn't even realize.
Did anyone else get 2 draft picks extended in that draft? Boom. Didn't think so.
Wow.
Let's go.
Yeah, he extended with another team, but still.
Yeah, I mean, we only traded Neesmith because it got us Drew Holiday. Like, otherwise we wouldn't have traded him. So,
the stepping stones. God, the Boston Media Mafia can really stretch a narrative.
Let's go. I think, I actually like Peyton Pritchard. I actually kind of like Peyton Pritchard this year. I thought, he's not going to be as good as he was in the people are going insane over the preseason, and people need to slow their roll about that. I think he's good. I think he's worse Cole Anthony, but I like Cole Anthony. So, I think that's fine for the number they got him at. So,
yeah.
Okay. Keeps him in Boston with his influencer girlfriend who posts about a white girl Autumn or whatever the fuck she does.
I was going to say these contracts that are at the bottom here, the Neesmiths, Najis, and Pritchards contracts. Mm-hmm. This is just kind of what end of rotation players are going to get paid now. We just kind of have to adjust to $7 to $11 million is what you're paying for your 8th or 9th man now.
When I started watching the NBA, I remember Brandon Bass making $6 million, and I was like, yeah, that's like a normal amount of money for a 6th or 7th man to get. So that's fine. And it's that's what your 12th man gets.
Yeah. Guy who might not even be in the rotation.
The rotation, right?
That. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So some guys who didn't get contracts. Let's touch on that real quick. Obviously, we knew Tyrese Maxey wasn't getting extended. He wasn't even included in the Woj tweet. Woj said these players, no one even thought that he could put because of the quote unquote cap space plan. If I had to imagine day one, assuming that everything goes to plan, day one next year, Tyrese Maxey will be getting a max contract similar to Brandon Ingram when he got one with the Pelicans a few years ago during restricted free agency. I would imagine there are no issues there. I think that they didn't trade him for Damian Lillard. And if you're not going to trade him for Damian Lillard, you got to give him whatever the fuck he wants because you clearly think that he can be one of the best players in the NBA. So Maxey didn't get an extension. Patrick Williams was another one that's a starter level player that didn't get an extension. I think that's fine for both sides to wait. Williams has not really progressed so far in his career in a way that I think a lot of people thought, but he's proven to be a solid player that I think will know his value more by the end of the year. Isaac Okoro was another one that's just kind of not. He's been kind of underwhelming so far. Yeah. Can probably prove if he has any value this season. And then the last one, the last two really that I thought were interesting were Sadiq Bey, who was traded because the Pistons didn't want to pay him, and he didn't get that extension. So this is why I never understood why they traded him for a bunch of second round picks, because I was like, well, couldn't you just have waited? You have his rights. You could just see what he gets in restricted free agency and go. And that's what Atlanta's going to do. because he wanted like $20 million a year, and he's not a $20 million a year player. He's probably more in that $12 million MLE range. And I think a year from now, that's probably what he'll end up getting in free agency.
Yeah. And I know the last one you're going to say too.
Well, before we say that,
and it's a shame.
do we believe okay. Patrick Williams wants so Patrick Williams doesn't want $200 million. If Patrick Williams thinks he's worth $200 million, him and his agent are delusional.
Yeah, that's not happening. I'm sorry. Like, that's not. I'm trying to think of what he would need to do for me to feel that way after next year.
Shoot 50% from three and make the all defense team.
Yeah, I was gonna say it would need to be. He'd basically need to turn himself into, I guess, Jaden McDaniels.
Bigger Klay Thompson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, God,
yeah.
That's not happening. Yeah, that's not happening. Sorry, I interrupt you. Who actually was your last pick?
It's Emmanuel Quickley. We talked a little bit about him yesterday on the Knicks podcast, the Strickland, that we did a guest appearance on. And I think he's another guy that if he wanted $25 million and the team only felt like he was worth like 17 or 18 million, I think it's fine to wait. And I think he'll get somewhere in between that next offseason. He'll get like 20 million a year on his next deal. He'll be signing a year from now. He'll be signing like a 5-year, $100 million contract.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's kind of it. Those are all of the extensions. I mean, is there anyone else on this list that you didn't get one? Because like, there are guys on here. Killian Hayes, I don't think
Lewis is not getting one. Killian Hayes is going to get one.
Obi Toppin was just traded. You got to see what he looks like first with the Pacers.
I got to say, I don't think Leandro Bolmaro is going to get that extension. I don't think he's in the league anymore. RJ Hampton.
No, he isn't. He's back in Europe.
Oh man, jeez. Yeah. Are there any like second? Are there no? There's no second round guy. Ian Martin Jr. is the only second round guy, but none of these guys were signed on 4 years. I guess Jordan Nwora, but he got traded.
Yeah, the second round in that draft isn't great. Did Trey Jones get an extension?
I don't think so.
I think. Hold on, let's look at Trey Jones' contract. He might have got extended last offseason. Yeah, he got a 2-year, $19 million deal last offseason.
Okay.
So there was at least one guy that had an extension.
They're all 76ers. It's Paul Reed got extended, right?
Fuck yeah, Paul Reed was. I'm gonna kill this thing. I don't understand why it keeps doing this.
Thank you.
Get out of here. Get out of here, Adam.
But yeah, Paul Reed and Isaiah Joe will be, but he signed a new contract for some minimum deal with the OKC Thunder, so he'll probably be up for an extension. And then Paul Reed was the other one who got extended out of the second round. But these were the first round contracts we were talking about. But honestly, God, this draft for the Sixers was so goddamn good. Morey crushed his first draft, dude. To get Maxey, who could be on a max contract a year from now, Paul Reed, who's on like a good value contract now, and then on top of that, you have Isaiah Joe, who, if you had just kept, is probably going to get like 10 to 15 million a year on his next deal.
Yeah,
absolute grand slam of a first draft for Daryl. What happened? To be fair, he also Springer could end up being good, and the drafting is certainly not the problem so far with Daryl. I would say that much. So.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
NBA is back. I'm excited. Trill, if you'll have me, I'll hop on the stream with you for a little bit here after we take a quick break. I'd love to watch the Lakers lose. So
let's go.
Let's go, baby. Let's see. My fat king, Nikola. He's got this, baby.
All right.
He did it for me once. He'll protect me from the Lakers again.
All right. We'll be back in like 20 minutes for the stream. If you're still listening on audio or video, sign up for the Uniball Patreon. Bye-bye.